Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org. Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can make back to school a breeze. Shop lunch essentials, snacking favorites, and even check off vaccinations all in one trip. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
A dramatic video from Denver International Airport made the rounds this weekend. In it, it showed passengers of an American Airlines flight use the emergency slides to evacuate after smoke and fire was seen coming from the landing gear. Fortunately, no serious injuries have been reported as of this recording, but we'll keep an eye on this story in case there's any updates. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, in a new order, President Trump aims to force many Colorado cities to take a different approach to homelessness.
Seems like Denver, but in the long run, I think it does create an environment of instability.
You'll hear how the strategies could change.
Also, Colorado's largest Pride event lost sponsors after attacks on DEI. But then
we had 550,000 people show up at Pride. That is a resistance.
Were they able to make up the funding difference?
And the game of bowling meets the great outdoors.
Tony's up to the pitch. He's grabbing his ball. Steps right up to the mat.
In this week's Colorado Wonders, how you could get in on the century-old tradition of lawn bowling.
It's Monday, July 28th. Here's the news in Colorado today.
A new executive order from President Trump aims to get cities to remove people who are unhoused from the streets. And in some cases, Trump wants to force people into mental health or addiction treatment centers. This strategy to tackle homelessness is in stark contrast to the way several Colorado cities do it now. And particularly controversial is the part about institutionalizing people. Denverite's Kyle Harris has been reporting on this. Kyle, could you explain the strategies that Denver uses now and how they might be targeted by this executive order?
Sure. So Denver's approach to homelessness is something called housing first. And many of the folks who lead homelessness aid around the whole metro area practice this approach. Boulder uses housing first, as do some groups aimed at housing veterans. So this is really widespread practice across the country. What it does is try to end chronic homelessness by finding immediate and permanent housing for people where they can access basic things like health care or help finding jobs. Denver and some other places also use something called harm reduction to help lessen the harms of substance abuse by providing things like clean syringes to prevent the spread of diseases and also prevent overdoses. This executive order from Trump aims to push cities to move away from both of these strategies. The administration calls housing first and harm reduction programs failures.
If they are failures, what does the administration or other critics of housing first point to as evidence?
When the executive order, they don't really. And homelessness researchers tell me virtually all studies suggest housing first works better than many other strategies.
What is Trump's order trying to get cities to do then?
Well, it would defund harm reduction strategies, and as you alluded to, it says that cities should force people experiencing homelessness into addiction or mental health treatment. It directs federal resources to be used in this way, and Trump's order would use the threat of criminal sentencing to push people into treatment. Homelessness researcher Don Byrne says one big problem is that not enough institutions exist to meet the extreme demand. So this is part of a big debate over providing housing first or making housing conditional on other factors like getting treatment or, in some cases, getting a job first.
Aurora's mayor, Mike Kaufman, is more on the side of making housing support conditional on getting a job and substance abuse treatment. He says the new executive order will make Aurora eligible for federal funding that it wasn't able to get before, which is a good thing for them.
I think since the Bush administration, the housing first has been the only method of dealing with homelessness that was recognized by the federal government in terms of funding.
Aurora's mayor wants other approaches besides Housing First to be funded as well. Kyle, what have you found in your reporting about pushing people into treatment before they've been able to get some stable housing?
Well, any barrier you put up makes it really hard to get treatment. So over the years, our team here at Denver has spoken to dozens of people with conditions like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, alcohol, meth, and opioid addiction. They say they willingly accepted treatment after finding stability in hotel shelters and housing. Being dragged in and out of drug-filled jails and punted about on the street left people traumatized and unable to make doctor's appointments or keep up with their meds. These stories mirror research that shows that once people have shelter, it's easier to go through treatment.
However, Trump's order would make the nation's primary fix forced treatment on unhoused people that's led by law enforcement instead of social services and healthcare professionals. Is there a history of this being done? Has that strategy worked?
Well, before the 1980s, there were many people who were locked up in psychiatric institutions run by states. There were widespread reports of abuse, neglect, poor conditions, and all that helped fuel the deinstitutionalization movement. That aimed to get people into community-based care instead. But while many institutions were closed, there was not nearly enough housing or care facilities to replace them. All that contributed to a rise in street homelessness among people with serious mental disabilities.
What would happen if cities just don't follow the president's executive order?
Well, the order said it would punish cities that continue to take the housing first and harm reduction route through a variety of ways. The government could pull funding or even launch criminal investigations. Denver relies on federal funding for its homelessness response. Now, how much funding the city could lose is unclear right now. The mayor of Denver says addiction is a real and pressing issue. He agrees with Trump on that, but it is far from the only cause of homelessness. He agrees people need access to care, but the mayor also argues the root cause of homelessness is a lack of housing, and he hopes the Trump administration helps the city build more. And even though Aurora will gain in the short term, Mike Kaufman's concern is that Trump's executive order takes away local problem solving.
My concern in the long run is what the Trump administration has done, although we're beneficiaries of it in the short run, is that it sets us up for whoever's in the White House that is going to make the decision by executive order. I would hope that Congress would address this in a bipartisan way to allow both approaches to occur.
So he says about the executive order.
In the long run, I think it does create an environment of instability.
Denverite's Kyle Harris, thank you.
You're welcome, Buzzy.
An update now. Despite concerns about sponsors disappearing, the massive Pride celebration in Denver last month managed to raise $2.2 million. This figure has just been released, and it's about $400,000 short of the goal for the group that puts on the event.
Of course, we lost sponsors, but then you find some sponsors, or you have sponsors that are willing to give a little bit more than maybe they did.
Kim Salvaggio is the Center on Colfax new leader. She credits its staff for finding the new sponsors. As for the ones that didn't return this year,
I think it's specifically with the Trump administration rolling back where they wanted to see DEI dollars and saying, corporations, if you were receiving any type of federal funding, you could no longer support DEI efforts.
But she's pleased with how the week-long festival played out.
We had 550,000 people show up at Pride. That is a resistance. That is people saying, I'm going to continue to thrive regardless of how you try to legislate my existence.
As the new head of the Center on Colfax, she even hopes future years will be bigger.
Later today, some of my meetings are about how we can extend some of our Pride to other places in the state, to some of those more rural Pride celebrations that you see. That's going to obviously take support and funding and partnerships across the state, but I believe we can get there.
That's one new way Salvaggio hopes to direct the work of the largest LGBTQ community center in the Rocky Mountain region. We also asked her what she makes of the fact that Republicans have successfully leveraged LGBTQ issues to win with voters.
What I have taken not just from the 2024 election, but from, I would say, the last 10 to 15 years, we are tapping back into parts of history where we have looked to find a blame, whether that is our trans community, our immigrant community. They're to blame for your problems. So there's nothing new in this playbook. It's old, it's tired, and it's transparent. And unfortunately, it worked.
She's most concerned with states' moves to ban care for trans youth, and Salvaggio pushes back on the idea that the left spends too much time talking about trans issues.
If you were living in a space where someone else was dictating to you your very identity, your very belief that you know who you are, if you were living in a space where that was constantly being called into question, would you want to sit in the corner and be quiet and be told not to talk about it? I think the work is for us to still keep moving forward and normalizing that trans people have always been here and will always be here.
You can hear CPR's full interview with Salvaggio in the Colorado Matters podcast. We put a link in the show notes.
When you hear bowling league,
I'm slamming him tonight.
you might think Big Lebowski.
Smokey, this is not Nam. This is bowling. There are rules.
Hey, Walter, come on. It's just...
Definitely something indoors. Dark alleys, clattering pins. But for these folks,
There it is.
That's much better.
Oh,
not.
bowling means something entirely different. Something quieter, greener, and definitely outdoors.
Wow, Kevin.
This is lawn bowling in Denver's Washington Park. It's the only club of its kind in Colorado and the only official green for it. This sport has been here in the park for a century, and recently, one of our listeners asked to learn more about it. Then, reporters Tony Gorman and Kevin Beatty had no choice but to immerse themselves in the game.
Tony's up to the pitch. He's grabbing his ball. Steps right up to the mat. I've never seen skill quite like this before in all my years.
So, what is lawn bowling? Think bocce ball meets shuffleboard. Players split into two teams. Each person gets 4 balls, which are slightly bigger than a fist. Those are called bowls. Importantly, these bowls aren't perfectly round. One side has a bias, which makes them curve instead of rolling straight.
Oh, why did I do that? Well, actually, you got pretty close. That's great. And you notice how that wobbled? Because you didn't, and it didn't curve much. You actually rolled it on.
Players take turns rolling their bowls to a smaller target ball called a jack, just like in bocce. The goal? Get your bowl closest to the jack. If you get the 2 closest bowls, you score 2 points. 3 closest, 3 points. You get the idea.
Oh.
As lawn bowler Suzanne Stover puts it,
it's not too complicated. I think anyone can pick it up.
I just want the record to show that I got closest this time and it felt really good.
no one knows exactly where lawn bowling started. Variations have popped up in ancient Egypt, Rome, China, even Polynesia. But here in Colorado, one thing is certain. The Washington Park Lawn Bowling Club has been around since 1924, and it's still going strong, with 45 members last year. For longtime members like Mark Thorpe, the sport is about more than the competition. It's about community, fresh air, and being able to leave the stress of your daily life behind.
And we tell everybody who comes, it's a guarantee that when you come here, you're not going to think about work. Well, you're on the green because you're always looking at what's going on.
Do you want to get into the action too? The Washington Park Lawn Bowling Club offers free lessons every Tuesday night, and their season runs from April through October. This question came to us through Colorado Wonders. What are you curious about? Submit it at the link in our show notes. Reporting for today's show also came from CPR's Elaine Tassi and Ryan Warner. To stay up to date on what's happening in our state, be sure to follow Colorado Today in your podcast app. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can make back to school a breeze. Shop lunch essentials, snacking favorites, and even check off vaccinations all in one trip. Get started at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app. Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.